Hello, everybody.
Roger.
And what?
Roger, Captain. Roger. Gotcha.
Yeah, there it is. Okay, cool. Yeah, well, hello, everybody.
Welcome,
Welcome
everybody.
to tonight's episode of Ramblemancy. Tonight we've got a good free range ramble for you all. We're just hanging out, chatting, just rambling. Wherever it goes, it goes. That's what we're doing. Um, yeah. So, first and foremost, I'll just sort of do some quick announcements. As many of you have seen, if you are like patrons, you will have noticed that there was a new tabletop tool chest that came out this week. It is a fantasy grab bag with all kinds of sundry things to put into your fantasy games or into your characters' backstories.
There's a toad sword in it.
There's a toad sword in it. Yep.
There indeed is.
Based on a true story from Freeman's own campaign experiences.
It was an experience.
A storied item.
Yeah.
I was not eaten by a toad. It was another halfling.
Another
sadly.
halfling was eaten by a toad. And Freeman's character benefited from it. So anyway, that's what you can expect to find in this month's tabletop tool chest. So yeah. We have also been plugging along on Tomorrow is Dead Season 2, the like back half of the season, and I am so excited for you all to see it.
Things are happening.
Things are happening. Yeah. The tensions are high. The drama is high. That's it. I don't know where that was going, but it's intense. Very good. Some very good stuff. Some characters, I won't say who, becoming post-apocalypse Batman. Don't worry about it. Anyway, so, so we will be letting you know, as I've said before, we're focusing on getting them recorded before we focus on actual, like, release dates and stuff like that. So, yeah. We'll let you know as soon as we're ready to do that. We've only got a few more episodes to record, and then we're done. So... that's pretty much
Tuesday.
Yeah, recording on Tuesday. So that's pretty much the extent of our announcements for the time being.
Hell yeah.
Oh, and I'll say this: this is not really like the most important thing, but I'll go ahead and announce ish. I'll announce ish. Due to John's increasingly busy schedule in the middle of the year with con circuits and things like that, there will be a period of time where we can allow John to keep a little bit of what remaining sanity he has. John will not be here for a good chunk of Ramblemancy, but what we are planning on doing is having at least one, but perhaps a rotating schedule of guest hosts for Ramblemancy. So there will be some new faces coming in to host the show in the middle of the year during the con circuit. So that's something that we are still working on, but you can look forward to seeing that at some point soon. We are going to continue to have guests and things like that, so it's not going to change all that much. We're just not going to see John here probably, unless time and magical circumstances allow in a random week. So
I'll pop in when I can, but like basically May until sometime around the end of summer, early fall is just this fever dream of like fulfilling crowdfunding campaigns and going to conventions and just like running kind of headlong from thing to thing. So I'm very excited for all of that, and I'm very excited for all of you guys to have some new people to chat with for a few months.
Yeah. Well, without further ado, John, what do you got for us?
I can make a little sound like this if I breathe in, like, ah! I got.
Whoa. How'd you do that?
You like you wanna roll that one back, run that back?
I can watch it later.
Play the clip. Play the clip.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. There's no clips.
Nope, can't do it. Only once. You get it once per stream.
Yep. Well, there it is. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for coming to Ramblemancy.
No, but actually,
the very last episode of Ramblemancy ever, like our final one ever, is literally just gonna be something really stupid. Like, it's just gonna end on something really dumb.
Yeah. truly, like, well, this is a this is a threat. But like, whenever the last episode of Ramblemancy comes around, it's going to be something like, we'll say a bunch of very touching shit probably, and then it'll be like, what do you got for us? And like, and then that's just just like straight to end screen Ramblemancy stuff.
We end Ramblemancy in the same way that many indie films have been ended. Very confusing, no resolution. Really makes you think. Anyway.
Really makes you think. Yeah, anyway, I don't want to start by saying hi to everyone.
Sorry,
Matt.
Sorry.
And Emily.
Let me back up. I want to be very clear. Not indie films, student films. Moving on.
Also, Newly Human, Amity, Emily, and Matt. Hello. It's good to see all of you here. Really makes you angry. Yeah, we actually have a lot of people who are in film and TV who frequent this chat. Yeah. Yep. Actually, so I think that's a deep cut, Lucas.
Yeah.
That's a deep cut.
In college, I took, there was one semester where I took a philosophy through film class, and it was a fantastic class. I loved the class. But in it, we had like a rotation where every day in the class, we started the class with one of the students they had a film that they picked that was the one that they were going to sort of like present on to the class, and then the class would sort of discuss. Like, we'd all watch the film. That was part of the homework. We'd all watch the film, but like one person would present on it and sort of like begin the discussion. And mine, God, I wish I remember the name of that movie, but it made me so mad. That was my first introduction to like, there is absolutely no resolution to this. And it ends in the most abrupt and confusing way. And like, I know that there was probably more thought put into it than into the end. There actually probably was a statement that was being made, unlike the end of Inception, but it really felt like the end of Inception. It really felt a little bit like that.
Oh no.
It was it's a whole thing.
That
Nico, hello, good to see you here.
What up, Ramble fam? We're just starting the episode by rambling until we find a good question, which I think I did think was something that was interesting to talk about.
All right.
As we've been going here.
I think metaphorically what has happened is I pushed John under the bus. The bus was really late, and so John just came back onto the curb and waited for the bus and then got onto it.
Yeah, that's true.
I
was thrown in front of it. I just kind of like stumbled into the street and was like, wow.
Rude.
It's so spacious out here.
Wow.
Usually this space is occupied by bus.
No, I watched kind of an interesting video earlier. So I think many people who know me know that I have been playing a lot of Destiny 2 the last year or so. It's just kind of occupied it's really, I have found myself very enamored with it because I grew up playing Halo and a lot of like Bungie kind of video games. And there is something that I find very like oddly relaxing about it. It's a lot of fun to play with friends, and if your character is fairly well established, you can kind of just push buttons, and if you push them in something resembling the right order, the whole screen explodes. And that's kind of like a nice way to just keep your hands busy while you hang out or wind down or whatever. You playing Destiny? What? No.
That's almost as absurd as John playing Metroid. Jesus Christ, Metroid.
Yeah.
Metro is a different game.
It's a different game, and that might frankly be more absurd, actually.
But yeah. Anyway, the Destiny series is aging, and it's kind of evident, and a lot of people have been experiencing like burnout with the game. It's been something that's been kind of talked about from a lot of the content creators around it. And I watched a video by one of them, Ascendant Nomad, earlier today, who is talking about how they took a break from playing Destiny, and they came back from it, and it's essentially like there's a lot of YouTubers out there who are like doomsaying about the Destiny, like, oh, the delay of the final shape and the last expansion that's coming up this summer is going to be the end of the game, and all of this stuff is so bad, and they're not fixing it, and there's so much potential for the game, and this and that and this and that. And like this person came back from a 1 month break of just like playing other games and not making content about them, and was kind of like, you know, video games are supposed to be fun, actually. And if it's not fun, don't try and force it to be fun. Just like do something else. And that's pretty normal. Like no game should be the one thing that you do all the time, as much as it, you know, might seem sometimes that that's the way that games want you to play them, or in like a, I think even like most sane game developers would probably be like, yes, we have a business and we want to make money, but also please play other games. And so that was kind of like cool and validating to hear amidst like a sea of a lot of people. A thing that happens, I think, a lot in games in general, right? Where people will have like their game that they play, and it's easy, I think, to forget sometimes that games are supposed to be fun. And that's kind of just like the thought that I had. Like it's healthy and okay to take breaks from things.
This is, I feel like, a product of two things. One, we can check this box off. If you are playing Rule of Lore Ramblemancy Bingo, you can check this off the box on your board, which is Lucas rants about capitalism, and how it infects the way we do literally everything. And two, also it's just sort of a post MMO era, right? Like that's this kind of like, because MMOs did sort of start they were the beginning of games you play like they're your job. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
with like grinding and like that kind of stuff, and like World of Warcraft.
Uh-huh.
I have had so much fun playing World of Warcraft. However, if you play it in a way that I don't play games, then it becomes kind of like a job a lot of the time. One that you have to pay to be included in. And it's, yeah, like I think there's a model that emerged after that, like beginning with MMOs, but then that same sort of going into like live service games, and then not even live service games, like looking at literally any Ubisoft open world title ever. Those are games that you play and they feel like you're playing, like you're at a job, because you have to work so hard to get to any of the things that are fun. And you have these little bursts of fun moments in between these long stretches of just working hard on shit. Like working on, yeah, just kind of grinding away. Whether that grinding away is in the form of like doing the same repetitive thing over and over again, or just fucking traveling the insane distances in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I mean, any Ubisoft title.
Oh.
Yeah,
Goodness. You've told me about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think like it's a similar feeling. It's a similar issue that I have with a lot of action RPGs, like in that genre in general, is that they expect you to play that game like it's your job. And I'm like, buddy, I want to like, here's what I want to do when I'm playing an action RPG. I want to log in and I want to do some arcane bullshit to set my character up in town. And then I want to go push a few buttons and watch a screen full of demons, void monsters, whatever the theme of your ARPG is, just explode. That is that's your game right there. And then when I'm done doing that, I want to pick up some things, and like one-ish of those things I should be able to put on my character to make my numbers bigger, like by a little bit, so that I can blow up more monster.
Yeah.
And like sometimes it's like, okay, so if you grind 6,000 instances of this dungeon that takes you 12 minutes, you'll have about a 16% chance of, you know, like
if I put that much time into anything, I should have a lot more than a 16 fucking % chance of anything happening.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's interesting, so Geek Out said I got so burned out on WoW to the point that I couldn't play it anymore. And I don't know that I ever necessarily got to that point, but here's what I will say about WoW and other MMOs that have taken that model. As someone who has enjoyed MMOs before, the thing that bugs me about a lot of MMOs that use the WoW format is that they totally ignore the leveling process. Because how many times have you heard the game, like the phrase like, oh yeah, the end game is where the game starts? I fucking hate that. Not just because I'm expected to slog through a whole like long lengthy leveling process just to get to the beginning of the game, but also because I think the leveling process should be the game. Like, I think that should be a fun, enjoyable thing, and it kind of mostly gets neglected because everybody's playing for the end game. It's like to the point where they actually include in like some of the more recent expansions and things like that. They include like level skipping tokens where you can begin your character at like level what I don't actually know where they're at now. 70 is maybe where the tokens go to. Maybe they go higher than that. Maybe they start higher than that. I don't know. The point is they start
Interesting.
up high.
Odd said that's like when people tell me to read the Wheel of Time.
Listen, I'm sure there's so much about those books that I would really love and enjoy. God, if I do not want to read 14 like books that thick. Like
I think
yeah, anyway.
this is also something that affects me as a game designer, is like more and more I find myself drawn to making games that are a thing that you can that are self-contained experiences, right? That you can sit, like pick up my book and sit down and read it and then play it with your friends for 3 hours. And then if you don't ever want to do that again, you don't have to. And if you want to do it again, great. But like, I want you to be able to sit down and just like play the game and then be done playing the game.
Yeah.
Because like, also kind of to the tune of what Odd said upstairs, like in a similar vein, not everything has to be something you love out of 10 or that you even talk about with other people. It's okay to just like do things that you kind of like or that you kind of don't like.
Yeah. I really like open world survival crafting games, but even I get kind of like, I don't know, on those though, they're the kind of thing that like I know that it takes a very specific person who like enjoys those things. I'm like, I'm never going to recommend these games to anybody unless I know that they already like this kind of thing, or if there's something in it that I think specifically that person will like, because yeah, like I like them. I would probably call them one of my favorite genres of game, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you don't have to love everything out of 10. I don't know. Also, on a related note, and we've talked about this so much, I don't think it's worth going into right now, but I will just say it because it's related to what we're talking about. You don't have to make the things that you like your personality. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, I think that's more or less what we're talking about
Yeah.
here, is that like you don't have to make the things that you like your entire personality.
Yeah.
Like I think, again, you can double check the capitalism box, but like consumerism like really encourages us to like stay into doing these things. Live service games especially tend to do that. But like, keep dumping money and time into this or you're losing out or whatever. And it's like that, on the one hand, I understand that you, the game developer, need to keep your business going, but like the consumer also has to understand, the person who's enjoying the thing also has to understand, like, you're supposed to do other things.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Odds, we can talk about this. We've done it before. We can do it again, and it's an evergreen topic because yeah.
Actually, wait, I do want to talk about that because sometimes it bothers me, and I don't know how to articulate it.
So, like, for me, my thoughts about this are that here's another. Okay, insert obligatory capitalism sucks. Anyway, we have reached a point in our sort of society with like pop culture and like the things that we enjoy, like even beyond pop culture. It's not like, forget pop culture, like just in general with the things that we do and the things that we enjoy, where it is a bound and central part of our identities, and like it's no longer sort of seen as like you do a certain thing and doing that thing doesn't tell me who you are. It just tells me what kinds of things you enjoy spending your time on, right? But now it's like it's almost like all those personality quizzes that flooded Facebook in the early 2000s were a
Oh
problem
God.
about and badly shaped the psychology of a generation. But yeah, like everything is like, no, it's not new. It isn't new. I think it isn't new at all, Nico, and you're right about that. We've always done that. But I think right now it's happening to a degree where it is replacing identity. Like it replaces identity, and I think it's no, I'm yeah.
I think
The thing about
socially,
sorry, just I'll just clarify the thing that I said about like quizzes was very tongue in cheek, and I absolutely don't think that that is the root of all of our problems. Anyway, sorry, John. Continue.
I was gonna say, I think that like kind of social media and internet culture play into that like a little bit. We as humans are like essentially reductive, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just how our brains are wired. We like to like simplify things because it makes them quicker and faster to think about. But the more you stratify things, the less nuance there is, and
Yeah.
Mhm.
life is a lot of gray area, as it turns out.
Oh yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
you know, we'll also pair bond with anything,
Yeah.
and like I think that's like kind of a problem. Like when you make something that you enjoy, like a creative property, like an intellectual property, like a game, a book series, this or that. I think you kind of just like flatten your own experiences, and it becomes like so personal to like try and move outwards from there. Just a really sorry, that's really funny, Nico. I mean, if you boil it down far enough, every major religion is just a really intense book club.
Yep.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah. I don't know that I have a whole lot more to say about it. I just know that like I see um sorry, I fully lost that train of thought. Um Newly Human, that's an interesting point. Newly Human said there's a very strong tie between this idea and a lack of media literacy that I cannot articulate succinctly. Um yeah, I can see that, and I also don't know if I can articulate it, but I maybe can say some things that help you get there. The big thing for me is things like um, people who really love Fight Club but fundamentally misunderstand what that book is about. Um, they like identify with like the main character
Oh,
Joker
and like
profile picture, guys. Like people who
yeah
watched
oh no.
the Joaquin Phoenix Joker film, and then
yeah
suddenly were like, "Oh, Joker! I get Joker," and I'm like, "No, no, 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 no!
Nope.
Not the point of that film."
uh, it's yeah, I think this is not unrelated. This concept is not unrelated to what Newly Human, this sort of tie that Newly Human is trying to like, bring together. It's,
Sure, sure.
and yeah, I think, and this, yeah, Newly Human. This kind of I think goes back to what a little bit what we talked about kind of at the end of last week's Ramblemancy with our TTRPG hot takes, which is it's also Newly Human says it's also like I only enjoy things that are not problematic, and things I don't like because they are problematic. And yeah, I agree. Um,
I think this so we're getting closer. This ties into like ascribing moral value to literature or to things like that. Like art exists. And I don't mean that as a like, wow, really makes you think like kind of tautology, right? I mean that genuinely. Like art kind of just exists, right? And we ascribe meaning to it. There was this really cool way that one of my literature professors in college described the relationship between a poem and its reader, and it was like with orange juice concentrate. Like the poem is the concentrate and the reader is like a glass of water, and the experience is not complete without either of them. Like the reader brings a certain amount of things to it, and
Right.
the way that your own experiences color what you think of media, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then what we do as creative people, as writers, as actors, as poets, as artists, is to try and find ways to communicate those common grounds, those essential bits. But when we start like ascribing moral value to doing certain things in art, irrespective of context, then it becomes like it becomes a very different kind
This,
of experience.
you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of that episode of Parks and Rec, where I think it's Jerry that like paints does like a painting and uses Leslie as like the sort of like face model for his sort of like, you know, nude centaur creature or whatever, and then like the one like very like religious family protection whatever lady comes and like tries to have it taken down or whatever, and it starts this whole discussion about like art and like it's whatever, and it's more, and they start like putting moral value onto. That's basically what the conversation that we're having right now. It's basically that episode of Parks and Rec. And
Yeah. Like, and I think it's frankly part of the reason that we have so much media right now that characters look directly at the camera and explain things to you so much, is because like uh, media needs to be palatable for it to be profitable, and in order for it to be in order for it to have the perception of being palatable, the message needs to be very clear. It has to be very clear to you at all times that there's a lesson here, and that lesson is not problematic. And that's not what art does. Art says, here's a thing. Now figure out why this makes you feel the way it does.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I've seen. Sorry, I'm very distracted because I've seen a lot of really excellent points being made in the chat, like some truly interesting commentary. But hi Risa, welcome. Yes, you heard art. We're talking about currently we are this. There's not really a topic for this episode, but currently we are talking about people's like the tendency of people to take on the things that they enjoy as a replacement for their identity, and talking about that. That's kind of the conversation we're currently involved in. I fully lost my train of thought because I'm very, very invested in like all the conversations that are happening in chat right now, and I was. But I liked what Newly Human said earlier, which is I exploded a teenager's brain once with the simple phrase, "Not liking something is not the same thing as that thing being bad." And yeah, that's man.
There is an enormous difference between this thing is objectively bad and I don't like this thing. You can not like a thing that is good. There are a lot of really good horror movies out there. There are. Like, it is a genre that exists for a very real reason. Like, a lot of people like horror. There are good horror movies. I don't like them.
Yeah.
That doesn't make them bad. It doesn't make them problematic. It means that I don't enjoy the essential experiences, the emotions that form of art makes me feel. I don't like that. And that's okay. It doesn't make it bad.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Our inability to separate I don't like this from this thing is bad means that we can't have you can't have those, as Matt was saying higher up, like you can't have those conversations with people. Like it's harder to have those conversations if we are deciding whether or not a thing is good or bad, as opposed to do I like it, do I not like it,
right?
What is it trying to say?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I know one of the things that I think I've talked about this a little bit, but I was recently thinking about it, and like I had a whole conversation with my dad of like a couple years ago about the fact that like you can't evaluate a piece of media. You have to evaluate a piece of media on its own terms, right? Like, so you have to you can't evaluate it on like whether some objective standard of whether it was good or bad. You have to evaluate it on whether it was successful at what it was trying to do, which first requires you to know and understand what it was trying to do. And like that, and then evaluate it on that basis, because otherwise we get into this whole thing like of like what you were talking about, John, with just like the moralizing of art, you know. And I think this is interesting with the like the Avatar: The Last Airbender live action, right? Like we can clearly see it here. I don't think it was perfect. I think it was a pretty good adaptation. Why? Because in most instances, with some like exceptions, of course, nothing's ever going to be perfect, but with some exceptions, it was successful at what it was trying to do. And at no point was it trying to one for one, shot for shot recreate the original animated thing. It was, however, trying to adapt it and take the spirit of it and put it into something. And I thought, you know, I can respect this for how successfully it has done what it set out to do. That's how I've decided whether is that also separate from whether I liked it or not? Yes, it is absolutely separate from whether I liked it or not. I liked it.
Yeah, like I enjoyed like my take on that same thing is like I enjoyed watching that. If I'm going to rewatch something, I'm probably going to go rewatch the animated series. And this harkens back to the video actually that I talked about earlier. Is one of the things in Nomad's video was like a lot of people are chasing, like for me and for a lot of people, it seems that they're chasing those initial memories of the thing, right? About in Destiny's case, like your first kill in PvP, the first time that you went into a raid with your friends, like those nights, like those weekends where everybody was messaging each other on Discord because like a new thing had come out and you all wanted to play it together. And like there's that nostalgia, and that happens the one time. And so like the Last Airbender series is not going to do that. It can't. Like you are different now. Like that came out when we were all kids. And now we're all adults experiencing an adaptation of something that we were deeply nostalgic about because it was part of our childhoods.
I think I was the same age as Aang when that show started airing, so I was 12. So, yeah. No, it's true. And like I think you're right, Nico, that it does recreate the original shot for shot several times. It does that, but I also don't think that's what it set out to do. Like it's not that it didn't do that. It's ever at any point. It's just that I don't think that's what it was trying to do. There were certainly parts where it did, and I thought but I think that those served the overall point that I was making of like staying kind of true to what it set out to do, and what it set out to do was kind of stay true to the spirit of the original, and those things that they recreated shot for shot, I think, are how they accomplished that. But yeah. Anyway, sorry. That was sort of just clarifying that point. Yeah. But yeah.
No, I'm also just scrolling back through chat. I saw something from Silver Sugar earlier who said, I love the mangaka Clamp, which are, for those of you who don't immediately recognize that, I think that's like Cardcaptor Sakura. That's your I think Code Geass is Clamp. If the men are very tall and a rectangle with very skinny, long legs and arms, it's probably Clamp. But yeah, they've produced a bunch of very popular like manga and anime. Almost said manga like a good Midwesterner. But like, do I think that Cardcaptor Sakura, the show, having seen the show and not read the anime, but having had someone describe the differences between the two to me, there are elements of both the manga and the anime that are not great. I understand that what they're trying to go for is like, love at the spiritual level can transcend all things. It's very like, 70s, 80s, like kind of hippie-y, like love transcends all stuff. But it also involves characters who are in very different age groups having feelings that are it's never like acted on in any way, but like the existence of characters like engaging with each other in certain ways, or the way that the story frames things, sometimes you're just like, this is a little weird, guys. So does that mean that the entire series, everything it has to say, everything about Cardcaptor Sakura is terrible and bad and that you shouldn't read it? And no, it does not. Does it mean that you should take some of the things that piece of media has to say with a grain of salt? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
That makes sense.
But that's what you should do with pretty much any piece of media, especially the things that you like, because we tend
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
We tend to be more defensive of the things that we like.
Yeah, a little bias. Yeah.
That there are definitely times, I even get swept up in this all the time. There are times when I'm talking to somebody who doesn't like something that I like, and I find myself getting really like, not like upset, but I feel myself getting like drawn into the thing, like, no, you don't understand. It's this is why it's good. This is why it's good, actually. And then at a certain point, I will eventually catch myself and go, wait, I don't care. I don't care. It does not affect me one way or another if this person does not agree with like the things that I like, you know, like that doesn't affect me at all. So it's easy to get caught up in it. It's really easy. But yeah, sometimes I just have to look at myself and go, like, just have some fucking perspective, Santana. Like, truly, just have a little bit of perspective here for a sec.
Oznet said, I remember reading this book about a guy who does dog sled competitions, and it's like his whole life he shifts into it and then practices and learns it all, and then after doing it, his doctor tells him he has heart problems and can't do that anymore, and he basically wrote the book to tell people not to build their identity on things that can be taken away.
Yeah.
That's one of those old adages, just kind of comes back, like, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. Don't I don't know, it's not to the occasional, like, you can check this box too, which is we talk about weird things that happen on dating apps sometimes on Ramblemancy. But weirdly, like, one of my sort of arcane, can't quite describe why it is the way it is, but this conversation has shed a little bit of light on that, is like, if I see on your profile, like, the only thing that you're talking about is like Harry Potter or like a particular media property across your entire dating profile, I'm like, okay, so, but what else, though? Is Harry Potter your entire personality?
I don't know where I land on that. I mean, I can understand that for sure, and I've certainly had similar thoughts. I don't know where I land on that one, though, because the very nature of dating apps is, like, that is such a separation between what you are seeing on the app versus the completeness of a person. And, like, especially on some of them that have, like, character limits on things where, like, you know... So I don't know. I used to look at that as like, oh wow, this is really shallow. But then, like, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, no, I'd rather get to know about who a person is from, like, them, and not, you know, just from scrolling on, like, an app that I'm going to swipe and then never think about again. So I hear you, and I definitely can see that. For sure, and I'm sure there are definitely, like, really egregious ones too. But in general, I've gotten to a point where I'm like, you know, I'm fine with. Look, this is not TTRPG hot takes anymore. This is real. This is real life takes, hot takes. I have no problem with small talk and superficial conversations because I usually recognize them for what they are. They serve a purpose. They exist because they serve a purpose, and that is that, like. So you're telling me that you're going to talk to a complete stranger and just launch directly into your deepest, like, your deepest life's regret or your childhood trauma, like, in that moment? No. You're going to jump right into that? Like, and if you are, I mean, good on you, I guess. Like, more power to you. But, like, that's not the way most people function. Yeah. You need to... Anyway. My hot take is... to summarize, my hot take is... I
appreciate yes, Lucas. That's how I got with my literal husband.
Incredible. Speed ran it. Hell yeah. See, and I can respect that. I can respect that. I also know that saying small talk is terrible and it shouldn't exist, just unrealistic. That's an unrealistic standard to have.
circling back to the conversation that we've been having around in the vicinity of like, you don't have to understand a thing, you don't have to like a thing necessarily for it to be good or bad. It's okay to be bad at stuff, and small talk is a skill. And some people have more of a taste for more superficial conversation, and some people don't, and some people are much better at it and some people aren't. It's just like, it's one of the many languages that we speak to each other, and like Lucas said, it serves a purpose.
This also might be like an example of like neurodivergent brain needing specificity, but like I have a feeling that as many people as there are who say they hate small talk, there are that many definitions of small talk, of what constitutes small talk.
You're right.
I think you make an excellent point there, and I like, if you told me that small talk constituted exclusively talking about like the weather today, and like things that were just deeply unpersonal, like far removed from either person's like experience even today, other than I guess that we all experience the weather, then I'd be like, yeah, no, I don't really want to talk about that at length with somebody. But sometimes, I live in the Midwest, the weather here is fucked.
It does weird shit sometimes, and you gotta talk about it with somebody, because a thing about relating to another person is a related shared experience, and that's a pretty safe one to start with.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, this is absolutely not what we were talking about, and I wanted to go back to like Geek Out's earlier saying, where's the delineation between separating the bad from the good? Rowling, Lovecraft, to name a few. Like, where does one stop that from? Where does one stop that from letting them enjoy something? And that's fair. I mean, honestly, I don't know that I have like an answer for that. I mean, I think there's been a lot of like good answers, I think, in the chat as to that, and like kind of discussion about it. Personally, I don't know, man. I don't know that this is the right way to go about it, or if there is a right way to go about it. When it comes to like Lovecraft, for instance, I got really into Lovecraft before I really knew how shitty Lovecraft was as a person. But like, I don't know. After that, I just sort of stopped. After I learned, I just sort of stopped engaging with Lovecraft and reading any of it. But I'm not sure that was the right call. You know, I don't know if that was the right move. I mean, maybe it was for me. And I don't think that there is an answer. I don't think that there is an answer for that. I think there's the answer that is right for you. That's because I don't think anybody is... I'm never going to tell somebody, hey, you shouldn't enjoy this thing to the degree that you are enjoying it. That just seems so wrong to me. And like, if you engage with a property where like the one who created it is like definitively problematic in some way or other, then it's up to you to decide how much you're comfortable engaging with that. I don't think that's anybody else's job to tell you, like, and like, I don't know. It's complicated, you know, because at a certain point with some things in certain situations with that, like Rowling, for instance, like there is a point where you, by engaging with what she does, are directly supporting her and therefore tacitly supporting her like views on things and whatever, kind of. But that doesn't mean that you have to just, like I've seen a lot of people calling for, just forget that Harry Potter exists, forget that it was a formative piece of media in your childhood, and pretend it wasn't. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, you can have spent your 11th year waiting to get your letter to go to Hogwarts, and you can be in your 30s now and be like, Yeah, Rowling's a shithead, and there are lots of other things that I
Yeah.
can read. Or if I have kids, or my friends have kids, there are lots of other books that I can give to them to have that same experience.
Odds. It's the good place now. How complicit are we in the effects of our choices in such an interconnected world? Absolutely, it's complicated. There isn't a good answer to this question. I don't think. I mean, I think it's worth talking about for sure.
Yeah.
You are never going to hear me say that a question without an answer is not worth discussing. I think it's worthwhile to have the conversation explicitly, because having that conversation more helps I think everyone involved find the tools to be able to determine that for themselves, you know? Like, what am I comfortable with? What do I think is... Honestly, I think that's really the only question that you have to ask yourself is, what am I comfortable with? At what point does it become uncomfortable for me to engage with this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But
I'm just reading, guys, like scrolling back up and reading through chat. People talking about Lovecraft and death of the author, and Nico said death of the author is very much dependent on how much of their problematic worldview is reflected within their creation. Yeah.
Terry Goodkind. Anyway,
I remember when I read one of those fucking books, and I read the first couple of chapters. So, like, when I read the first one of Terry Goodkind's books, I had found it because I think my brother had picked it up because it was a few bucks at the store or whatever, and read a couple of them, and then had put them down. And I just, like, I needed reading material because that summer was the summer that I was working for the Department of Transportation doing traffic counting, which meant that I was spending long stretches of time, 8 hours a day, sitting in a car on the side of a road, counting cars as they went past. And sometimes it was a very busy highway, and I had to, like, be sitting there, like, constantly entering data as, like, several different kinds of cars would be going past, like, the interstate. And then sometimes it would be Lark Avenue, aka Highway C492, in some backwater county in a cornfield, and I would see 4 cars in 4 hours. And so, like, I needed a lot of things to read. And I remember getting, like, 2 chapters into that, like, 2 or 3 chapters into that book and be like, whoa, what? There's some interesting things happening here, but also, what the fuck is going on, dude? And then I read a few chapters more, and I was like, if I had other books that I could go pick up right now, if I wasn't stranded in a car, I would do something else. My phone has a limited battery. I can only listen to Critical Role, then Campaign 2 for so long before I just get tired of it. And so I wound up, like, not hate reading, but just, like, couldn't look away from a train wreck reading the entire rest of that book.
Yep.
And it is so much. There's so much to unpack with
John,
that.
I want you to know that before I knew anything, because I came to that series because there was a TV show made that I kind of enjoyed. It was bad, but I kind of enjoyed it. And so I was like, oh, maybe I'll read the actual books, because maybe the actual books will be kind of good. Because you know how adaptations go. Book to screen adaptations tend to go. The book is almost always better. First of all, not only was that not the case, but so I bought the box set of the first 3 books of the Sword of Truth series, and John, would you believe me if I told you that the first book is the best of the 3?
I would believe you.
They truly only got worse as I went
on the principle that that's usually how it goes, because the sequels are usually worse, but it is hard for me to imagine. It's hard for me to imagine it getting worse.
I put myself through those 3 books so that you don't have to. And and I'm here to tell you, it's real bad.
Wow.
Like at a certain point, like his worldview is definitely reflected in the world, and it's reflected in some of, like, the characters and stuff. But at a certain point, you start realizing that it's not his worldview actually isn't reflected in the characters, because there would have to be characters for that to be the case. The characters are actually just thinly veiled mouthpieces for his bizarre fringe politics. that will
Whoa.
frequently stop in the middle of the plot and just go on these long monologues that are literally just him reciting his own political manifesto, and
no.
it's truly unhinged.
Oh no.
I thought the first book was bad.
Yeah, it's truly unhinged, and look, I'm not gonna gut into it really about this author because it's not really what we do here. But I will say this: the only things that I really need to know, that you really need to know about this author, is that he believes that it is stupid to read anybody else's works because he's an author and he, reading anybody else's stuff is like, why would I do that?
No. Oh
Um,
no.
Secondly, the one and only author that he does read, would you like to take a guess?
It's the guy who wrote Conan.
No.
Is it Rush Limbaugh?
You're moving in the right direction, but no, it's not Rush Limbaugh.
I don't know.
It's Ayn Rand. There it is, Kate. Kate got it.
Horrible.
It's Ayn Rand. That's the only one. That's the only author that he says that he reads. Yeah.
C.S. Lewis be like, if they don't get that lion is Jesus, I'll light my hair on fire.
Probably reading someone's work that that fits into his view, his viewpoint. Therefore, it's like, yes, of course,
Yep.
I know what I'm talking about, and
Yeah.
you should only listen to me, and I guess this other person, because I also think that they are correct. And
Exactly.
cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Lots of that going on.
Also, he's another one of this is my favorite brand of fantasy author. Read least favorite. The ones who insist up and down that in their book with dragons, magic, heroes of old, magic swords, and wizards, that they are not writing fantasy. That's my favorite brand of fantasy author.
Mr. R.R. Martin among those?
He might be. I don't know if he might have said something like that. I don't remember. I know that I feel like I vaguely recall reading a quote that J.K. Rowling said about her works, but yeah, that was similar. I don't know. It's one that I've seen a lot, but
I also said, reading through the Mistborn series, I'm on book 5, and sometimes I'm suddenly reminded Brandon Sanderson is Mormon, not in a terrible way. I'm just like, oh, yeah. Like, I remember I read several of Brandon Sanderson's books, and I want to be clear that Brandon Sanderson's a very good author, and I think that, like, on the whole, he's a pretty all right person. His books are good. And there is a lot for anyone to find in those. I've read a good chunk of Stormlight Archive. But learning that he was Mormon after the fact, like, snapped certain things into focus for me, where I was just like, oh, that makes a lot. Okay, some of the things in the book, and I was like, some of the points during the story was like, why is this like this? Or why doesn't this character or this is an interesting decision to make from a fantasy author standpoint, and not like in the, oh wow, so curious, just like and then I arrived at I found that I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And so now sometimes when I it's a similar thing, like I'll be experiencing some piece of Brandon Sanderson's work, and I'll just remember randomly when I read something like, oh yes, right, this is reflected in here.
Yeah. I don't know yet if it's that I like Brandon Sanderson as an author, or if I just really like Mistborn. I can't tell, because I started trying to read the Stormlight Archive, and I didn't get very far, but it might have been because I was, like, fully on a Mistborn kick, and so, like, I'll come back to it eventually, but yeah, that's what I did with Mistborn. My first attempt at reading Mistborn just didn't go anywhere, but and I came back to it, and now I love it. I really love Mistborn. But yeah, this is for those of you who have only recently joined us, this is not what we intended this whole episode to be about. We sort of have started and mostly stuck in the vicinity of talking about, like, media and the ways in which we can, should, or should not replace identity with media.
And that's included some conversation about like death of the author and like what to do when like the author of a piece of work is a piece of like is a piece of shit, like, you know, all of that kind of good stuff. I saw somebody earlier mention an article by Neil Gaiman, and if you find that, I highly encourage you to post it in the Ramblemancy channel.
Yeah.
That. One of my favorite Tumblr experiences is that Neil Gaiman is very active on Tumblr. And so I just see him around all of the time, and he is such a pleasant force in the world.
Absolutely. I love this also, odds and ends. Break time. We all say a stray idea we had today.
Oh, what?
Just a stray idea that you had today.
Oh, just give me a minute. I had a lot of time to think today at work.
Yeah.
Here's mine for the day.
Books just have cardboard in them.
Books just have cardboard in them.
Good. What was yours, John?
I mean, one of the stray thoughts was, oh, a smaller number on the gauge for wire means thicker wire. Fascinating. The other actual like thought that I wrote down was game ideas, Ghosts of Myself, a game where you go through your drafts, email, social media, etc., and make found poetry about what you find.
John, you have made a lot of games that, while I think they are cool, are not for me. This is not one of those games. This is specifically a game for me. I'm not telling you to make this game, John, but if you made that game, I would 100% buy that game.
There's a reason that I wrote it down. I was like, no. This is real. This is a good idea.
The downside of it is it requires me reading anything that I wrote in the past. But, you know, I've done more embarrassing things by accident. So an embarrassing thing I do on purpose shouldn't be so bad.
I like Kate's a lot, which is, it's weird that we eat corn. And
that is pretty weird. Yeah.
We have a lot of it.
This just reminds me of a bit that my roommates and I do continually, which is like God to one of his angels. Why are they drinking all of those weird like alt milks? There are so many creatures that make milk, and the angel's like, well, they don't like that milk, and God just goes, they don't like that milk. And we do that, like the punchline that like, they don't like that milk at each other constantly.
Yeah.
Anytime somebody's like, well, I don't like that. And that's just what that it's weird that we eat corn made me think of.
Yeah. Newly Human and I, once again, being extremely similar in how we process our world. Unfortunately, I've been thinking about media analysis all day. It's most of what I think about. Me too, only I think today specifically can be best characterized as I really wasn't having a lot of straight thoughts. I was just binging Brooklyn Nine-Nine all day. So like, it's on
Netflix.
It is on Netflix now, which is why I've been binging it, because I never finished the last season, and of course I want to watch all of it, because it would just be a bummer to watch the last half of the last season. I'm gonna watch the whole thing.
I started too. I started watching it when it was first rolling out, and then lost steam. But now I'm kind of looking towards it.
Matt, I'm not caught up on Bad Batch. Mostly because they're shorter episodes, and I don't. When there's a show that has like sort of like it sits in that 25 to 30-minute window, I tend to not like waiting a week to watch it. So I usually, just will wait for there to be a significant number of episodes out first. But I'm really excited to get into it, because, boy, was season 2 extremely intense, and I really want to see more of that. So, someone say Helldivers just self-insert bad batch. That's extremely funny, and probably would be if somebody pitched it to me that way, it might actually get me interested in playing. Oh man.
Yeah, the other thought, and again, we've had a literal Ramblemancy conversation about this. The other thought that I have been thinking about today is, what difference between board game and RPG?
Oh boy.
Which is just a perpetual thing in my thought. I'm working on a new game, and so like it does seem that very often I just kind of design a legacy board game, and then I'm like, maybe I should. I pivoted so hard from like weird esoteric like ritual. Like I don't know. I feel like I have two modes. I have my game design brain is a light switch. And in one position is weird esoteric ritual games where I like try to instill in the people who play my games the same kind of wonderment that I strive for in my everyday life. And the other end is this is a legacy board game with role-playing mechanics attached to it. And I have like there's zero in between for me. I would love to shoot like right here sometime.
You know what you should do, John? I have a solution for you. I think you should make a game that is about that exact concept. And then you could be you could be the Christopher Nolan of indie TTRPGs.
Oh, my God.
Not that that's a goal to shoot for, but like you could do it if you wanted to, is all I'm saying.
See, if I made that game the right way, though, that's any bait. Like, that's Game Awards bait right there.
Yeah.
Like, a weird, esoteric, but strangely crunchy game about the experience of being a game designer. Like...
Listen, that's what they say, right? Like, the Oscars love movies about making movies, and the and the Ennies, they love games about making games. Like,
it's a clear winner. I think you should do it.
John, I've been thinking a lot about games that use things people have collected, but I don't know what to do with it. You should tell me about it because I love those kind of games. I as a person attach stories to literally everything around me. I'm not really like a pack rat or a hoarder, but I wind up with very sentimental attachment to a lot of things that I own. And that's that. They just like become part of my space and the story that I tell about it. And so sometimes I'll just be sitting here at my desk and I'll be like, I wonder what life is like for this little candle. And that's just a thought that happens in my brain. So I think the idea of games that use the things around, like, it's very Toy Story, you know?
Mm-hmm.
What are the secret lives of all of the little things around us?
Yeah. It's interesting because like
I'm not.
We started this Ramblemancy with talking about like the concept of games are supposed to be fun, right? But I think that feeds really well into this conversation about like the like identity and that kind of stuff, because I think sometimes this is a thing that I look, I can intellectualize about anything that I am interested in all the time. I could do it all the time. But sometimes I also will like catch myself doing that and being like about TTRPGs or whatever and be like, dude, shut up. It's a game. Calm down. And like like sometimes there's just like a little bit of like, dude, chill out. It's a game.
That's the way that I feel about tabletop too, though. Sometimes I'm like, okay, yes, this is my job, and my job, like my need to make money to exist in a capitalistic hellscape is important, and I have to like think hard about like, is the game that I'm making both something that I'll enjoy, so that I have a good time making it, so that I'm motivated to make it, but also is it a good product? And like, there's all this mixing around in there on like the work side of things, and then just like playing tabletop games. Like, there's a lot of things that are important to me. Like, I like having a certain kind of experience, but also sometimes I have to like zoom out and be like, Motherfucker, you're playing a game.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm not minimizing it by saying that. I'm doing the opposite. I am trying to increase the validity of a thing just being fun. Right? Like, it doesn't have to be this, like, deep, intellectual, meaningful... No, sometimes you can just be like, ha, game fun. The end. End of conversation. Like, that can be the whole thing. So, like, I'm by no means trying to minimize it by saying, like, it's just a game. Like, but, you know, it is.
In the same Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition game, I have had the experience of, like, having to make, like, you know, very potent, like, story choices as to, like, how we're going to do something, or whether or not we're going to do something, what course of action we're going to take. You know, having very, like, you know, cool, fun, like, improv moments. And in the same game, I have also been, like, sitting there daring my GM to be like, hey, Celia, fucking impose disadvantage on me all you like. Fully 50% of my skills I can't roll beneath a 20 because I'm a rogue. Like, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. And Risa said it's why we tend to like arguing, too, about frivolous things anyway. And I think that's a really good point. Because, like, just as much as sometimes I have to, like, stop myself from, like, overly intellectualizing something, I think I also really hate it when I am trying to, like, get into, like, sort of the deeper sort of intellectual side of, like, the sort of more sort of deeper meaning of things, and somebody just, like, just diminishes it by saying, like, why do you even care? It's just a game. It's like, because I am currently trying to care more about it and trying to connect it to other things, because nothing in this world exists in a vacuum anyway. And I'm currently trying to explore that side of it.
This is what we're doing today.
Yeah.
Get the memo.
Yeah. Like, sometimes, like, that's literally the whole point of this show, of the Ramblemancy, is to go way too hard, way too deep on something that doesn't really actually matter in the grand scheme of things, but connects to things that truly, honestly do.
You know, we've spent 70 minutes so far talking, like, to elaborate on the point. Game good. Let people have fun. Take breaks sometime.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whoa.
I don't think...
Why use many word when few word do trick?
I don't think an entire...
That's the title for this Ramblemancy.
Why use many word when few word do trick?
That's like my whole life.
I don't think that an entire Rule of Lore writer's room could have summarized that episode more succinctly. And believe me, we've tried.
Oh my gosh.
There have been several times in Rule of Lore history where we, for promo purposes, or just because we wanted, you know, people to be able to catch up for, like, big points in, like, a mid-season finale or a season finale, you know, so if a bunch of people wanted to cruise in and watch. We have, like, you know, recapped, like, 20 plus episodes in, like, a 3-minute or 4-minute video. And let me tell you, the 2 weeks that we spend in advance, like, the 2 weeks that we would spend in advance of doing that, trying to distill down all of the important information from a bunch of 3-hour episodes of RPG playing to, like, a 3-minute video.
It legitimately got to the point where I would think to myself, I swear to God, if I have to say, John, I think we might be getting into the weeds a little bit, one more time, I will literally explode. I will explode. Because it's so easy to do. Like, we'd be like, okay, but they have to know this detail in order to know what's going on, so we got to include this, but then that means we have to include the whole thing that led up to it, and then we'd be like, what if we just said this instead? Oh yeah, that does the job. And then we move on.
Yeah.
Like, anyway. Yeah.
One day the episode will be like 3 minutes. Yeah, fucking some April 1st, like April Fool's Ramblemancy bit where we just cruise in. The episode is 3 minutes and we're done.
Oh man, that's really interesting. Risa said it can be a fine balancing act between taking something too seriously or not. I got so deep into meta-analysis on MLP FIM back in the day that it legit started ruining the show for me and taking away the joy even when the criticisms were totally valid. Sometimes it pays to shut your brain off. Sometimes it helps to be miffed. It can be hard to find a middle ground sometimes. 100%, yeah. So, like, I feel like so much of both sides of that coin, actually, so much of enjoying a thing and also, like, being kind of, like, sort of critically analyzing it, so much of both of those processes comes back to sometimes you kind of just have to take a step back, you know? Mm-hmm. Because I think when it comes to enjoying stuff, it is possible to think yourself into hating a thing. And just the same with, like, sort of analyzing something, you get way into the weeds sometimes and start missing, like, important stuff, important context, important things. So, like, with both of those, I think the key truly is sometimes to just take a step back and, like, yeah. Nico says, I want to take a temperature check here on something that's been bothering me lately. Who here enjoys when a piece of media manages to make them uncomfortable? Ooh, okay. Good question. I suppose it depends on, for me anyway, how it makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think that's kind of my answer to that too. I'm like, it's usually, am I uncomfortable because this is like, am I uncomfortable because this is something that is, not to use a buzzword, like problematic? Mm-hmm. Like this is like not good, or am I uncomfortable because this is doing something interesting and it's like it's doing what art does and forces me to reflect on something about myself. Right. Am I learning something about myself right now? And the difference between, like, is this gross, or is this, am I uncomfortable because this is gross, or am I uncomfortable because I'm learning something?
And I think even within that, there is also a level of nuance too, because sometimes there's like something makes me uncomfortable because it is showing me a part, like Silver Sugar just said, like a societal mirror, right? It is holding up a mirror to a part of society that we'd be more comfortable not looking at, right? But then there's the ones that make me uncomfortable because it is incurring in those very things, right? So, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It depends, really.
It's one of those things where it's like, to cite an example, am I watching something that's propaganda and I'm uncomfortable because I don't want to watch this? Or am I watching something that is making a statement about police brutality? Right. Which will also make me and like police brutality and privilege and like race in America. Like, you know, there's Is Bo Burnham style uncomfortable? Yes, I like it. Yeah, Bo Burnham's stuff is interesting. I never finished watching Inside because it came out, I think, still during the pandemic, and I was like, I can't watch this right now.
Which one was that? Is that like he's inside, he's doing a lot of his stuff and his special effects like inside this, like in his room? Yeah. No, that's something. That is that is very,
And Kate makes a good point about catharsis too. Right?
Yeah.
I like, if media is going to make me uncomfortable, I like it to also be cathartic, right? Like some kind of.
Yeah. And like, like, there are some things, like watching some shows, like watching, like using the propaganda as an example is a good one, because like like I said, I'm watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine right now, and I wouldn't consider that propaganda exactly, at least not as egregiously as a lot of other shows tend to be. But when I'm watching some of those shows, even ones that I have enjoyed thoroughly in the past, now kind of looking at it with a very sort of different perspective, I look at it, I'm like, I don't love this. And like, it's that moment when you recognize that something is trying to get you to see a certain group in an entirely uncritical light, and you're just like, ooh, that is not, in a light that is just like flattering, but that is not the entirety of the picture, it can be hard to watch sometimes for me.
SWAT. Yeah, that
And
show
yes,
is, yeah.
I agree, odds and ends. Season 8 is the opposite of propaganda. I agree. It very much is. They definitely found a way of, like, sort of... Because I think there's... When you're in a situation like that, you have two options. One is to ignore what is happening in society and just keep doing what you're doing, and the other is to address it. And, and I think they chose to address it, and the way that they did it was pretty good as far as I saw. But Nico...
Kate makes a good...
Oh, yeah.
Kate makes a good point too, that like my tolerance level for certain things changes based on where I'm at, and what's going on.
Yeah, that's true.
But Nico said, to clarify, I mean when a piece of media is deliberately trying to make you uncomfortable because the situation calls for it. And I think what a lot of us are getting at here is yes, in general, if that's executed, if it's well executed, if it's done in a way that kind of takes you all the way through that experience and brings you out the other side.
Yeah, like I definitely hate an experience where a piece of media makes me uncomfortable on purpose and then leaves me there.
And just doesn't resolve that tension at all.
Yeah, and I understand that there is a place for that. That doesn't mean I have to like it. So I understand that there's legitimate value in doing that. I don't like it, which was the question. So, but yeah, so I think in general I agree. The idea that it like brings you all the way through the experience, and then you get some like, yeah, like you said, catharsis at the end. I think a lot of shows where they utilize secondhand embarrassment, for example, as like a main form of comedy, real rough. And I think even with some sort of catharsis at the end, I still don't enjoy the experience. That's one specific example where like a show is intentionally trying to make me uncomfortable, but I don't enjoy the experience, period. It's the main reason I was never that into The Office. I know there's more to that show than that. I understand. I don't feel... Me, the person who likes to wade, is willing to wade through a lot of shitty media to find the like good in there. I wasn't willing to wade through all of that for The Office. So
parkour. Anybody? No?
Yeah. No, I got you. I understood. I got you.
I like the show.
Yeah.
Odds and Ends makes some good ones. Sandman made me really uncomfortable, and I straight up skipped the darker parts of the show and the graphic novel. I just read the text and skipped through scenes that was very far and away that I knew would linger. Yeah, there's some stuff where I'm like, I know what you're doing here. I know what message you're trying to convey. I appreciate the art form of what is happening. I can't experience this right now, or I'm gonna have a bad time.
Yep.
Yeah, the diner scene is a lot. The diner is so much. I also skipped portions of that episode. I did not know what was coming, and boy, howdy.
Yeah. Kate says, I also like the don't punch down rule in this stuff too, because that's what makes me uncomfortable in a do you realize what you're doing way. Yeah. I've said before, like, one of my favorite shows of all time is Community. The thing about Community is that it came out at a time when I think there was a lot less sort of social awareness in like the general sense. It was like in sort of like less of a widespread kind of culture of that, I should say. And a lot less emphasis on like sensitivity to like other groups of people. And then on top of that, it is also one of those shows that occasionally engages in like humor that tries to be edgy. And I've said it before, but like edgy humor is the type of humor that will age the worst, because either it will get to a point where that the thing that was humorous, that was kind of like trying to be edgy or whatever, is now completely unacceptable to joke about, or it will get to a point where it is no longer that weird or like unusual, and it's just not funny, because it's like, okay, why are we joking about this? It's not. Was this a joke or was this a punchline? I don't know. And like edgy humor tends to age pretty badly. There's a lot of things I love about Community, and I still love about it. There are definitely things that didn't age well for both of those reasons. So,
that's true.
Yeah.
Nico had a follow-up question. Do you think your tolerance for making you uncomfortable or sad has declined compared to 5 or 10 years ago? I think that this is a personal answer to that question. I can't. I suppose it's a personal question, but like I can't generalize about everybody else. But for me, the pandemic had an impact on that. But in general, I find, on the one hand, I know that I don't really like media that makes me feel bad. And that's in part because like dealing with depression and anxiety, things that like make you feel a certain way can like risk pushing you over into like the kind of getting back into like old habits of spiraling. But I'm also better at handling those things. So I would say like my tolerance for them is probably higher now, but I don't watch that much more of them. I have to be in the right mood, and I have to recognize within myself that like, this is something that I can do right now.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry, Freeman, did you have something?
No, I'm just like, that's a good answer, honestly. Like,
yeah. I think for me,
I've gotten better at like reading myself.
I think for me, it's the same, right? Well, because like within the pandemic, sort of the same answer. Where like within the pandemic, like the actual like the height of everything, like 2020, 2021, and like
say lockdown, because that's what we're referring to.
Yeah, there were times where I had a lower tolerance for some types of media that made me uncomfortable. But I think as we've come out the other side of lockdown, I have regained a lot of my like where like there's enough distance for me from like all of the horrible shit that was going on simultaneously in that moment that I now can sort of deal with those things again. So it's like not a permanent change, but there was a change for a brief period of time. Also, completely unrelated, but I do want to say, Amity, on the subject of that paper, I think I was there for that when you gave that presentation, because I think we had the same room, and I think I followed right after you with a presentation about D&D and TTRPGs for my senior thesis, if I'm thinking of the right thing. Anyway, I saw that conversation, and I just wanted to like point that, yeah. But
yeah, Kate had a similar answer, I think, which is I think what makes me uncomfortable has changed, not necessarily the scale to which it does. And I think that's also also kind of true here. Like the things that make me some of the same old things make me uncomfortable, but like in general, like I'm a different person now. Different things make me uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if my answer to that question is... I don't know that it's yes, but I also don't know that it's no either. I would have to like think about and think back and think very specifically about certain situations and pieces of media, but I don't... Yeah, so I'm not sure if I have an answer to that question. I saw... Newly Human said, I'm going to answer with not answering. Often find that horror is the only thing that makes me feel like I'm not losing my mind. Like other people are experiencing the same horrors of the world that I am. I sometimes require an upsetting story. Yeah, I can understand that. Like I started like my first actual full watch through of The Walking Dead like right in the middle of lockdown. Like right in the middle of it. And I remember my friends being like really? You're watching that? That's what you're watching now? And like, cause sometimes I don't need the opposite of what I'm experiencing in order to feel better about the thing that I am experiencing. Sometimes I just need a different version, a different and more palatable version of that thing, right? It's like, it's a little bit like an inoculation, right, where you take little bits and pieces of it in a safe to consume kind of way in order to like build up and your immunity, or at least your feel better about it, right? It's kind of how I felt. So yeah, exactly, Odds. And that's the thing, like, Odd says I watched Parks and Rec for the first time in lockdown because I needed something that was comforting and bad and bad with good. Absolutely. And like,
Yeah.
I definitely had my fair share of that during that same time too. So yeah, I truly don't know if, that's why I say I truly don't know if the answer to your question for me, Nico, is yes, but I also don't think it's no. I don't know if it's changed at all, to be honest with you. I don't know that it's changed in any, like, yeah, lateral change, I think, maybe. Yeah. We are.
Yeah, that's the.
Oh,
Sorry,
no,
yeah,
go ahead.
I was just looking at Silver Sugar's comment because
Mhm.
that's I feel like that's a fairly good summation of kind of what we've been talking about here, which is I have a higher tolerance now than high school. I was such a prude. I'm fully aware of the limits of my asexuality and don't have a problem with discussing sexual topics, and it's made me a better person. Experiencing discomfort means that you're learning. Boundaries can be tested without breaking them and without being anyone's fault. And I think this is, again, like, to kind of sum up the episode that we've been having here. Media making you uncomfortable, not liking things, like, it's like it can be a teachable moment. There can be things that you can learn in that moment. It's not, if something makes you feel weird or makes you feel uncomfortable, that doesn't make the piece of media bad. It's not the piece of media's fault even necessarily, right? It's just like a way. Art is a way for us to understand ourselves. I think is what I'm getting at here, and I think that sums up that experience pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 We are kind of at the end here, but I also want to give Nico, I want to give you like an opportunity. Oh, you have it. You've taken it. An opportunity to clarify your question, but specifically curious about whether or not people are going to greater lengths to avoid consuming media that might make them uncomfortable than they were pre-pandemic. I think that's how I interpreted your question in the first place, and like I said, I think for me my answer is the same. Like, I don't know that it has changed one way or the other. There were brief moments within that where it changed, but yeah, I don't think I lean more one way or the other anymore, like,
Yeah.
at this point. So yeah.
Yeah, I think same.
Mm-hmm.
I watched it all.
But I do agree with a comment that I saw earlier. I don't remember who said it, but like, it does have to do with like moods are a factor, because there are definitely some moments where I'm like, I don't really feel like watching something really intense, and like it doesn't even have to be like that it makes me uncomfortable, but even just something kind of in like a more like intense, either narratively intense or dramatically intense. Like, I don't necessarily like. I was, for a while, I was like binging a rewatch of the 100, and if you've watched that show at all, you know it is fucking stressful all the time.
Oh, hey,
There's
me
never
too.
not, yeah, it's completely stressful all the time. And then I was doing that for a while, and then I got to a point where I was like, I am a little bit exhausted by this now, and I need to watch something lighter. And then I did, and now I'm watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And yeah, we should talk about the 100 sometime, Odds. I feel like that's one of those things we just haven't like mentioned much on the show. We've like mentioned it, but like not actually talked about it. And I'm down to do that at some point. But yeah, so like, but in general, in a complete overarching sort of broad brush sense, I don't think that I am any more or less likely to avoid or lean into media that makes me uncomfortable than I was before.
I think that's true of me as well. I don't think that I go to any I don't think I go to any greater lengths than I did pre-pandemic. And it's kind of like I was talking about. It's more dependent on my present mental health And as many people's was during lockdown, my mental health sucked. So.
Well, and I think I want to go back to something that you said earlier, John, because I heard it when you said it, but not until this moment did I like sort of like take it in and go, yeah, you know what, I agree. Which is the thing that you said about being a little bit more in tune with like where you're at in the moment, as far as that stuff goes. Because I think that is what has changed for me as well. Is I think I am a lot more, because of out of necessity during, you know, lockdown and sort of stuff, I became more in tune with what I could and could not handle at any given moment. And I think that's the only thing that has changed. Not so much my right. And I, at a certain level, like, you're like, okay, what's the difference? But I think there is an important difference there. It's not that I have an overall tendency towards like leaning into it or like avoiding it. It's just that like I think I'm better at recognizing when I am able to consume some forms of media over others. And I think that's the thing that has changed. Like I said, I heard when you said that, John, before, but like until this moment, it didn't like sink in, and I was like, yeah. So I wanted to make sure to bring it back up because I thought that was like a good point.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. Well, this is the end of the episode, and it is time for us to go.
This was
huh?
Ramblemancy, but deeper.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. That's a fair point, Silver Sugar. That at some point, like there are some things that you just know that you won't watch because you know you can't handle it, and that's me. I have that for some things, so I get it. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming and hanging out with us tonight. I appreciate that you are all here. And those of you who are watching on YouTube or watching the VOD who couldn't be here, I appreciate that you are here too in the future. And so we will. Sorry, I just fully became unable to form sentences. There's not, for some reason in my head is like there's a reason we can't do it next week, but I don't think that's true. I might have just made that up. Okay.
With my calendar.
John checks the calendar.
Consult the calendar.
Oh, you have a physical calendar?
Yeah, I have. I asked my parents for this Christmas to get me a physical calendar, and it is one of the best decisions I have.
It's the year you get one. It's the year I switched from physical calendar to doing things on my phone and my iPad. It's weird because for the longest time I've been using a physical calendar because it helps me, or it has helped me in the past.
The numbers of
I
people.
decided to change that up, John.
It's 2 weeks from now that I won't be here.
Right. The numbers of people who use physical calendars and digital calendars are apparently a zero-sum game. When one shifts over, the other must shift the other direction. I believe that's actually covered in Newtonian physics. Yeah. Anyway, we're gonna go. No. We're gonna fucking go. We will see you next week for more Ramblemancy. But if not, we'll see you the next time you decide to come roll with us. Good night and good zone, everybody.
Good night. Mwah.